Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Welcome to What Do You Want to Do? I'm Leonard Kaplan, and another week goes by and another guest comes here. And this week's guest is Victoria DiPrizio. How are you, Victoria?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I'm looking forward to this interview because you will be our first guest who has been and is a dancer on the show.
Wow, I feel special.
You are. So you are an English teacher by profession, but yet you still are very serious about dancing. You've had a very prestigious dancing career.
I have.
You've won a few awards. Why don't you tell us about how you started in dancing and the awards that you've gotten? And do not be shy. Tell us all about them.
All right. I started dancing when I was 3 years old. My parents put me into dance because I was always dancing around the house. So they figure, well, if she likes to get her energy out, we'll put her in real dance class. And I started with tap and ballet. And I loved tap because of all the sounds that it would make with my feet. But I wasn't a huge fan of ballet. You know, the music was really slow. You have to wear the tights and the tutu. So I was not the best ballerina. I still am not the best ballerina, but I really liked tap because I really liked the sound that they made. And I would always come home and practice tap. There's like old videos of me practicing tap when I was like 3 or 4. So tap dancing was my main thing. I've done other styles, but tap is my main genre of dance. And I like to say it's like making music with your feet. So I also tell people I'm a musician.
Very cool. Maybe you'd make a good drummer because that has kind of a beat, right?
It does. I've always thought about doing drumming, but I got my feet, so it's okay.
You know, it's funny. I have a weird memory about tap because when I was young, growing up in Revere, Massachusetts, you know who wore taps? The tough guys that want to intimidate other guys. You'd hear them walking down the hall, and then they would get louder and louder, and you see them in their windbreakers and their slicked hair. This is even before Beetle cuts, and it was, So maybe after this interview, you will have dispelled that image in my mind because I'll think of you now.
There we go.
Now, did you ever think of doing other types of dance besides tap and ballet? And before you answer that, is ballet, as I have heard, very painful?
So ballet is not painful, point is painful. So ballet is what you see the soft shoe, and point is what you see our professional ballerinas do, where they're on their very tippy toes. And that one is very painful because basically it's a piece of wood that you're on your tippy toes on the entire time. So just imagine walking a whole day on your tippy toes.
So that is not ballet.
It is a form of ballet, but it's called point. So
Okay.
it stems from ballet, but it's more sophisticated, I would guess.
Huh. And why is it so painful? Why? Because you're on your toes, and that's not a natural human movement.
Yes, that's not a natural human movement. Also, if you look at a point shoe, at the very bottom it is a square, and that comes from a combination of fabric and wood. So you're basically walking on wood. And the problem with point shoes and other shoes, such as tap shoes or jazz shoes, is your feet have to mold to them. So they're very stiff at first, and then the shoe actually conforms to your foot. So at first, that's why it's super painful. Usually, dancers get a lot of cuts or blisters. Using tap shoes, my feet are gross. Don't ever look at a dancer's foot because they have blisters. and cuts, and it's just because our feet have to form to our shoe.
Well, you were explaining that to me. I have done a wrestling show for 31 years, and you walk around in places in pain yourself from your dancing, mostly from the feet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, mostly from the feet. That's why it's really important. Dancers take a lot of time to stretch and warm up before they even dance. For tap, you got to roll out your ankles, point and flex your toes, and just make sure that your feet are warmed up. And same thing from when you finish, because dancing is with your body. And you only get one body. So you got to make sure that you take care of it and that it's in good health.
That's amazing. So tell us about now growing up in this dance world. Did you go more than once a week? Did you go every day? Did you practice at home when you weren't having your lessons? And if so, how much? Tell us all about it.
So when I started dancing, um, was starting when I was 3, it was more just for fun. And then the teachers started to notice that I was very dedicated and I could pick up the moves really fast. So when I was around 5 or 6, they put me on a competition team. And a competition team, I like to say it's a lifestyle. You are in the studio Monday to Friday from 4 to 8 o'clock, sometimes even 9, and you are just there training and working. You're making sure that you have all your steps right, that you are all stretched. And on a competition team, we would go to competitions and compete on stage. So we would spend hours practicing our dance routines and getting ready for our competitions. I remember being in elementary school and my mom would have to put my hair in a bun and I'd have to wear my tights and my leotard under my clothes at elementary school. So I always tried not to go to the bathroom in elementary school because I would have to take my leotard and my tights off just to go to the bathroom. And my mom would always pick me up, bring me a lunchbox, it usually a bowl of pasta, and I'd have to drive straight to dance right after school. And then I'd be in the studio for a few hours, come home, do homework, and then start the whole cycle again.
So when you made this transition from going to ballet when you were 3 and it was fun into the competition group, did it take any of the fun out of it?
It did not take the fun of it. I actually enjoyed it more because you're there every day with the same group of girls. So we always call that our dance family. So we have our regular family, and then we have our dance family because we just spend so much time together. It basically is like your family because you're in the studio for hours with the same people, training, learning the same dance. So you really get to make connections and know people. um, I really enjoyed it as a competition dancer. Each studio is different, but the studio that I grew up in was in Somerville, and they made us take ballet, tap, jazz, lyric, and hip hop. So I was in 5 classes when I was 6 years old, and then I continued on with those classes throughout most of my career.
I was doing a little research and I found a page that says Medford's Rising Star. And in group 2, age 12 to 13, there you are, Victoria DiPrizio tap dance. Tell us about that competition if you can remember it out of the others.
Oh, yes, I remember that one. I even have a trophy in my room I'm looking at right now from Medford
Ah,
Rising Star. I competed in that. I did a duo, so it was me and one other girl. We tap danced, and the concept was that we were best friends and we were hobos. So the dance actually started off with just my friend. There was a bench and a trash can, and I was super small, so I was hiding in the trash can to start the dance, and then I popped out. And it was a tap duo, so we tap danced, and we ended up winning in our age category for Medford Rising Star, which was super
that's
cool.
great. Does video exist of that event?
Yes, video does exist of that event.
Well, that's the one we have to find and show it while this interview is on.
Yes. I will hunt it down.
Okay, so dancing is about as far from what I do as anything. I have nothing against it, but I just can't do it. I am not coordinated in that way. I'm very inhibited. To me, it's really maybe because more women are enamored with dance than men. Is that an unfair or fair assumption?
I would say back in the day when I started in the early 2000s, that's fair, but it's actually grown and there's a lot of men in the dance community. And
Really?
we always used to joke when we would go to our competitions. The first thing that we would do before we even found like our dressing rooms and we would stretch is we would get a program of the competition, and it would tell you your number, so when you're competing, and who's in your category. And if you look in your category and there's a boy in your category, you automatically knew that they were going to win.
Hmm.
Because there weren't a lot of boys back then. So they would always make the boys win first just to encourage more boys to dance. So if you saw a boy, you just knew that that was not going to be your day to get a trophy.
Well, that doesn't seem fair. That seems kind of rigged.
It does, but now I feel like there's an equal amount of boys and girls, so it's a more fair for if you're in competitions now as a dancer.
It has evened out. So, yeah, the
Mhm.
last time I danced was in 2005, and I was in a Zorro costume with a mask. And I was able to do it because I wasn't self conscious about people looking at me because of the mask.
There you go.
And I wasn't looking at my feet. And, but if I tried right now, I'd be looking at my feet and probably fall on my face.
Yeah, we would never be able to look at her feet. We'd always train to look up, our chin up, because we'd have to perform to an audience.
So the music must be very, very integral to your dance routine, obviously. Do you get like a dancer's high when you're in the middle of a performance sometimes because of the combination of the movement and the music?
Most definitely. And also the audience. I always feed off of the audience. So I always, try to make them clap in the middle of my routines or cheer in the middle of my routines because that's who I'm performing for, is the audience. So if you don't have an audience, that's kind of in my mindset when I was growing up, then kind of what's the point? We're there to entertain. But definitely listening to the music and being on stage is definitely an adrenaline rush, and usually when I was competing, I wouldn't even remember what I did on stage. I would go out and do it, and then people would be like, "You did a great job. That was awesome." But then in my mind, I'm just focusing on the music, on my steps, on my moves. So I'm not even focusing on what I'm actually doing. I'm just making sure that I have all my steps in order.
That's the 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in his book about how people become great at what they do. They spend so much time at it that the unconscious takes over.
Hmm.
And just like what you said, it just carries you, I guess, and literally in this case. Now, I've known some dancers in my time. I used to work on a bilingual TV show, and I would meet salsa dancers and bachata dancers and samba dancers. Can you walk into a place that's having any of those styles of dance and pick it up right away?
For myself, yes, because I've just been training for so long, and I don't know, it's just in my blood. Like if I hear a tempo, I hear a beat. If someone shows me a dance move or a dance step, I'll just mimic it right away. So it's definitely a combination of something I was born with, but then I also was trained to, learn things quickly through movement.
When you were about 17 or so, or maybe 16, 18, did you ever think about dance as a full time career?
I did. So originally, I did not want to go to college. I felt like dance was for me. And what I actually did was I ended up going to college, but I was undecided. And what I did was I applied to a few professional dance companies and I got into a few, and I actually got to travel to many different states, which was a bonus. So I got to
Mhm.
dance and travel at the same time. One time I went to, in 2017, I went to Miami. I got to tap dance with the Joffrey Ballet School. And although it has ballet school in its name, they offered a tap program. So I got to tap dance in Miami. I got to meet a lot of people down there. There's actually a group of girls that we still talk. We have each other's phone numbers, and we still keep in touch. So I got to do some tap dancing in Miami. Later that year, I went to New York and I actually did a musical theater Broadway program. So I'm not the strongest singer, but they had us singing and dancing at the same time, which was definitely a challenge because, dancing takes a lot of energy, a lot of your breath. So trying to sing and dance at the same time was a lot. But again, I got to travel to New York, got to meet a lot of people, got to meet some famous Broadway dancers. And I've also been to Ohio as well. I went to Cleveland, Ohio to tap dance one weekend, which was super fun.
So, okay, so what happened? What changed your mind?
So, what changed my mind was when I was about 16, I was still at the dance studio I was at, and they had me be a teaching assistant. And I really liked teaching the kids how to dance. That was something that was really enjoyable for me to be able to pass on the knowledge I have to younger kids and then get to see them on stage and perform on stage. It's a very rewarding feeling. Um, so I knew that I wanted to teach dance as well. But it was actually when I went to New York, when we went to that Broadway program, and we had a Q&A session with one of the Broadway dancers. He was actually a backup dancer in the musical Book of Mormon on Broadway. And he told us all that dancing is a great career, but it does not last forever. He told us that your body can only take so much. And kind of similar to the Olympics, how gymnasts, retire super young, dancers retire super young. So he said you kind of have a plan B, and you also don't know when your body's gonna say that's enough. Your body can get hurt. There can be an injury. So he said the word, it's not that stable of a life. And that kind of scared me a little bit, especially being the age I was. I believe I was 19 or 20. So for someone to tell me what I loved, what I wanted to do as a career might not be stable and it might end a little bit shorter than I had hoped, kind of drew me back a little bit. So because of that, I still kept dancing, but I focused more on teaching dance. And that eventually got me to think, well, I really enjoy teaching. So why don't I transfer some of that just in a different way, which was in the classroom, which is how I became a classroom teacher.
That is a fascinating journey because people don't really think about dancers having a finite life. I'm friends with a dancer. Her name is Christina Stoll. She used to own a place called the Chamber Ballet, and I used to videotape her dance recitals and things like that. And for a while, and at the time, she was thinking of retiring, and I'm not sure how old she was then, but she never retired. Or at least I don't remember when she retired. She ultimately became a college professor, took the same route that you did. I'm not sure what she teaches now because I only see her online now these days. But people don't think of dancers having the same worries as a baseball player or a hockey player or a football player or a wrestler, and it's very very similar because your body is being beat up, and uh, at least with professional wrestling, you see people. Somebody I interviewed said, "Oh, you can always spot a wrestler because when they walk through the airport, they're limping." Now when you in your after a recital or a series of recitals, let's say you were on tour, Does it affect your regular walking in a negative way?
Um, it doesn't really affect my walking, but you can definitely tell when a dancer is drained. I remember after I spent a week in Miami and it was great, but after the last day of, tapping from 7 in the morning to 4 o'clock at night every day, my body was just wiped out. But then you recover, you get back into it. That's why it's so important to have that recovery. And I'm sure as you interviewed wrestlers in the past, they need time to recover as well. Because if you just keep going, 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 then like you said, you're going to see people limping in the airport. So you do need that time.
You have a really great sense of confidence and an air about you. You're a very good speaker. I just watched your video that was shot at the school not too long ago. Do you credit your parents with this, or is it something within you that you naturally had? How do you retain this? How did you develop such confidence in poise?
I would credit my parents. They raised me very well. But I also credit it to the world of dance. Because growing up, especially with our teachers, you had to dress a certain way, look a certain way, you had expectations. And if you didn't meet those expectations, there would be consequences. If you go to ballet class, your hair needs to be in a bun. You need to have a leotard on. When you go to competitions, you need to be there at a certain time. Or if you miss your spot to dance, they don't go back. That's it. So I learned at a very young age with the help of my parents and the dance world that you need to own what you're doing, and there are consequences for what you don't do correctly. So definitely, I can tell even myself with some of the students I teach, I can even tell which students are dancers just by the way they carry themselves and the way that they treat adults, speak to adults. It's a very different world. I like to say the dance world.
Did you ever think of auditioning for like a Broadway show as a dancer?
I did a few years back. Um, the tour group for Dirty Dancing actually came to Boston. They came to Cambridge. They were holding open auditions. So I actually took the day off of school. I was in college, and I figured, why not? I'll go. Um, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people there, and they pack you in this very tiny room. And you're all trying to stretch and get ready, and they just give you a number. That's the crazy thing about auditions, and a lot of people don't know is they don't know who you are. Um, you get one shot. If you mess up, if it's not your day, then they're just gonna move on to the next person. And I remember sitting there for hours. They still hadn't called my number. I went in to the audition. They showed us very quickly the routine. They didn't stop. They said, here's the step, here's the turn, here's whatever, and you have to pick it up quickly. And then they start doing it in groups, and then they decide if they want to call you back, if they don't want to call you back. And I remember they didn't call me back, and I was really discouraged because I felt like I had the dance moves, I had everything ready to go. And then as I was packing up, I saw the group that they called back, and all the boys were about 5 inches taller than me. I just wasn't the right height that day.
Wow. See, any little thing, and you can't take it personally with acting or voiceovers or dancing. That's
Exactly. I
amazing.
always say it is very cutthroat business. The dance world, the theater world, it's very cutthroat and it's never personal. That day I wasn't tall enough. I remember I auditioned for the Encore Casino. They were going to do a dance performance there. And same thing, I went and I thought I did great and I saw all the people they called back and all the girls had long hair and I had short hair. So it looked like they just wanted girls with long hair that day. So you never know, but you got to try your best, but they just might not be looking for quote unquote your look that day.
I guess entertainment is probably the one area where uh, equality is based on external factors Uh, you know what I mean? You can't sue them for discrimination in that case because the performance depends on what look they're looking for and things like that.
Exactly. And they only know you in that short time frame. They're sitting down, getting to know you. You're just a number and whatever you look like on the outside.
And it
Which
sounds
is
like that
kind
old show, which is way before you were born, Secret Agent Man. They're giving you a number, they're taking away your name.
of, hmm
That was part of the theme song. Now, do you share this passion with your students? Do they
almost.
know you're a dancer?
Oh, yes. Well, I teach dance, regular dance to dance students, and I teach English at the high school, but my students at the high school know
Mhm.
that I'm a dancer. Whenever we do our poetry unit, I actually bring in my tap shoes and I
Mhm.
tap for them because sometimes it helps them to hear the rhythm of my feet to go along with the rhythm of the poetry. So I always try to incorporate that.
So you consider yourself today a dancer as well. You weren't a dancer in the past. You're a present day dancer, correct? You're a current dancer.
Yes.
So where
And
do you find time? You teach the most demanding subject, the most take home subject, English. You're constantly correcting papers. I know because I taught English for a year and I thought I wasn't going to survive. How do you do it? Where do you find the time to practice and be a great English teacher?
Everyone says I'm too busy because I have so much going on. Yeah, I have to teach English, I teach my students dance, but even when I'm not dancing myself, like if I'm not in the studio myself or learning a routine, I always say you can just dance everywhere. I always tell my students that. If you're standing in line at the grocery store, you can tap your foot, or if you're in the aisle of a grocery store, you can do a leap or a turn. You can dance about anywhere, even when you're sitting. I'd always tell my kids to practice their tap steps in school when they're sitting down. And I used to do that when I was little, but I used to get in trouble because I'd always be like click clacking on on the floor. But the great thing about dancing and being a dancer is you never stop being a dancer. So even if you no longer are on stage or performing for an audience, you can still just dance day to day.
It's very, very similar to what I read. I take sometimes a few lessons and certain skills online, and there's a guitar player online that says the same thing. You can squeeze 5 minutes of practice a day, or piano, you can squeeze 5 minutes of practice. It's the same, I guess, with dancing.
Exactly.
So, what would you tell my standard question? What would you tell young people about what you do and how they can get involved?
Well, don't be afraid of dancing. I know that you said you're not the best dancer.
That's
Um,
an understatement.
I feel like most people who don't dance, when they're, at a party or something or music's on, they always just
Mhm.
want to avoid dance. But
Yeah.
I always tell people that you will surprise yourself. Even if you think you got two left feet, everyone has some kind of rhythm in them. So anyone can dance. But don't be afraid, right? I always tell people like to laugh at themselves. I tell my students, I'm a teacher, but we make mistakes too. So same goes for dance. You might not pick up the steps right away. No one's perfect right away, but you got to give it a try. You got to give anything a try.
Are you by any chance a Seinfeld fan?
I'm not a huge Seinfeld fan, but I know of it.
Do you know of the Elaine dance?
I do not know of the Elaine
So,
dance.
so on an episode of Seinfeld, Elaine dances, and before she dances, there's this big buildup. Like, have you ever seen Elaine dance? She's the worst dancer on the planet. So then they show it, and you know, this is a mark of her great acting. She was the worst on the planet, and I always think of that, when I think, should I dance now? And that's why the answer is no. I don't want to be the male Elaine. But everybody's different. But I want to thank you, Victoria, for coming on to What Do You Want to Do? And I hope it was fun for you.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So when you have your next recital, maybe you can come back and promote it.
I know I will.
All right. Well, Victoria DiPrizio, thank you very much for joining us. And join us next time for another guest. And until then, what do you want to do?